Hello, everybody. This is Narada Rishi Raja with expeditiousfool.com. And I want to talk today about something that's sometimes misunderstood, and understandably so. It's pretty complex. When we go through our spiritual journey and we look for spiritual truths in everything, and the yogic path is definitely a predetermined way to do so. But when we do that, it brings you to a state of, at the end, well, it's not the end, but it brings you to a state of where you can recognize the formlessness of God's source. And that's where a lot of people will say universe or spirit. It's just this mystical energy, kind of, right? Devotion is really tricky, right? But that force without the devotion part, which is where we get dualism, because we live in a dualistic world in the material, the prakriti, the nature. When we live in that situation, it requires something else. It requires a dualistic way of relating to this formlessness, and the deeper we make that relationship, the more context and more learning we get out of it and out of that relationship. Does that make sense? So I titled this video, and as I want to talk about, I cried in the shower today. Now, a lot of people, they hear this, and when they understand these processes, to get to this level of understanding requires non-attachment. It requires daily mindfulness practice to understand in this philosophy, right? And a lot of people look at that, and it requires separating from your thoughts, your body, your emotions, realizing your emotions are just chemicals. Your thoughts are just your body's way of creating chemical homeostasis based off of pattern that's already had. All of these things, and when we're talking nuts and bolts, a lot of times people think that means void of emotion. That means once you break the amygdala cycle, once you obtain enlightenment, what they would call, which there's many stages of enlightenment, and after enlightenment, there's still a whole lot more learning, and there's still more stages and more work to be done, which, there's a ton of information out there on that, especially the Zen tradition explains a lot of different ways on that and different levels. But once that happens, people think, either when they hear somebody like that talking, they think that this person is cold, which it's the exact opposite. They're so compassionate. They just want to actually transcend and break through a lot of those conditioned programs. So it may seem triggering, right? And then the other side of it is they feel that maybe once they get there, if they try to do that themselves, that then they won't feel anything, right? And that's not the truth. As long as you have a body, you still will feel, you still will think as well. You just separate from it a bit. And the dualistic way, whether it's a religion or a spirituality thing or a fairy tale you tell yourself, as long as it's to explain this highest formlessness and explain the absolute truth of it all, which many don't understand in the fairy tales, and I understand why there's a lot of religious trauma. Trust me, I do. And I don't even follow a religion, but it's very spiritual, and yogic is the science behind this. But with this, they feel that a lot of times that means emotion is dead. That's not true. You feel it, but you do separate. The dualistic processes help with that. For instance, when I say I cried in the shower today, I hadn't cried in a long time, but there's a lot of emotions and things like that, and we do have to feel and we do have to process sometimes. Now, if it's a thought pattern, we need to break that up. If it's a chemical, we don't need to feed it with thoughts. And so with this, what I did, I was in the shower and it hit me. And I held myself like this, and I deeply went in to connect with God's source while feeling this emotion. And I started to cry, ugly cry, letting all of it out. And what I realized during it is it felt so good because I wasn't standing. Yeah, my feet were standing, but my hands weren't my arms anymore. It was something else. And that force, which is formless, had came into my arms and in my body and was holding me, while me, like a baby, just this upper torso part and that crying head, was able to let it all out, while being held, supported, all in solitude. That's an amazing gift, and that's what I offer. That's what I want to express to people through the yogic philosophy. It's much more than some asanas. It's much more than some breath work. It's much more than flexibility or getting fit or even healthy. It's much more than all of that. It's consciousness expansion and evolution. And for me, it's the only way I can do. So I hope that each and every one of you get a little bit from this. Through that experience, through me and connecting in the way that I do, yes, I understand the formlessness. I understand that there is no separation between me and Brahman or everything else, right? And I understand that all is that one. And through my bhakti, which is what I specialize in instructing, bhakti yoga, through my bhakti, that devotion, I was able to be held there in my human experience, right? While still knowing that I am one of all of this. But this only comes through breaking through amygdala cycles, breaking through many, many chemical patterns and programs that we've created that have worked against us. Just our standard culture and society sets these up. If we interact and start breathing and acting as most do, then we're setting ourselves up for health failure, spiritual failure, mental failure, etc., as we see on a grand scale and rising. And I hope to be part of curbing that a little bit. If you'd like to schedule a session with me, you can see all of my services, some of my services available on expeditiousfool.com, and pretty soon all of my services from Sacred Vibes Holistic Center, which will be opening up in Bay City in November. So I hope to see each and every one of you out there. I love each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being part of my journey, and I'm honored to be a part of yours. Namaskar.